Hello everyone, I welcome you to this module 16 of SDG 9 Industry, Innovation and Infrastructure under the course of UN SDGs on NPTEL. So moving on in the line, if you see, the first few they were about individuality and their well-being, then we are coming down to the basic necessities, and then little like about livelihood, clean energy, and how those things can be ensured is through industry, innovation and infrastructure, because employability, innovation, jobs, manufacturing, demand and supply, all of those mechanics, like how all of these things actually become part of like this system, that economics in a whole, if you see. So there are demands of things, and there are like people who are working towards fulfilling those demands, and in turn they are making their living. And similarly, in a way also, if you see, all of us are like a part of like this whole ecosystem, this whole economics, right? And we are related through this SDG 9 that talks about industry specifically, innovations and infrastructure. So we will see in detail some glimpses. Just 54% of the global population use the internet. In the least developed countries, only 19% has online access. Low developing countries, least developing countries, there are only 19%, like 1/5, approx of their population has access to internet. And globally, well, this percentage is more, it's a little over half, 54% to be precise. And that means in the like developed countries and all, this percentage is going to be like even higher, right? Because if this is the global one and this is 19% only in the LDCs. So this penetration, if you see, well, why do we need internet and all? I think one can ask. Internet has its own abilities to put you in connection with the rest of the world. Well, we cannot go and talk physically and meet everyone, right? And you can go and get some information. I think a lot of those things are happening over internet now. Internet is helping in almost like every possible way. Okay, so beginning from like a satellite connections to weather related information, climate change studies, like education related stuff, we are communicating. We are using even this medium of like this online education system of NPTEL, connecting like various IITs and the like best of the best professors from these institutions to connect the students from any other place in the whole country, right? Whether you come from a city, town or a village, it doesn't matter. If you, as long as you have access to like these devices and internet, you can get through like these lessons and courses and you can benefit, right? So that's a like a tool, and a very effective tool which is helping us, all of us, in multiple ways. Like earlier in the railway stations, people used to go physically and book tickets, book their like reservations, right? But now it is all possible through like just simple like a taps on your phone or like in your computer. So all of this is possible if you see like through internet. Even sharing data, what is happening in the South Pole, you can, using internet, you can directly broadcast over here. You need not go to South Pole and see what is happening over there, right? So a lot of like multiple ways, each and every possible way. I think depending upon your field, from where you come from, you can see the uses of internet, right, and other things. So overall, through this SDG, what is the goal? To build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. So three components: resilient infrastructure, so that there is like a some degree of like a safety to prevail over any abrupt changes, like a sudden changes which might like occur, right? And Yeah, inclusion sustainable industrialization. So this problem level industrialization has been with us for quite some time, perhaps roughly around 2 centuries, but that was just plain infrastructure which has ruined this whole planet, right? But now in the place of just infrastructure we need like a sustainable development, sustainable industrialization, right? And foster innovation. Innovation also is a like a phenomena where you go for some very unique, like a very efficient or very like a special kind of like a like a derivation or like a problem solving, or mechanism solving, or any like like a new like a positive or fast like a pace like a change from the existing one. Okay, that qualifies as innovation. Innovation comes in variety of like a definitions and variety of like applications and things. And for innovation one need not be formally trained also. That's one of the unique like a features. Okay, for innovation one need not be trained from school or like a college or like a university, or one need not be a professional only who can do like some work like an engineer, doctor, etc. Okay, so innovation actually is above all of these limitations, all of these like restrictions. Even a farmer who is like just has been involved the whole of his life in the farming activity can do some like a most amazing innovation and can solve like a unique problems in a unique ways, right? So innovation has like that capability. And by mentioning foster innovation, it means giving patronage to such efforts wherever they are happening, irrespective of like a person's like a position or education or qualification or like a social strata and economic conditions, etc., etc. Okay, so to foster that, because those things actually come out of a context. Okay, and they are solving actually these like problems and situations in a very special way, right? So that carries a potential to get implemented and solve the whole like a issue in a much efficient way. And that's why we need to foster innovation, right? So that's why it is essential. Economic growth, social development, and climate action are heavily dependent on investments in infrastructure, sustainable industrial development, and technological progress. Okay, so all of these things can improve if you see like an investment in infrastructure, like a plain infrastructure like roads, like a water supply, right? Bridges, right? All of these things like railways, aviation, they are all infrastructure, right? Part of the infrastructure. So you can go for like innovative like a ways to deal with like a prevalent maybe problems and issues and come up with some like a efficient solution. So that can be an innovative this thing. Well, there is a regular improvement. Okay, like you are improving for example companies are improving efficiency of their engines, right? So that's a regular improvement like every 1 year, every 2 year, every few years you keep seeing some more efficient like engine, which gives like a improved mileage from the previous one, and gradually it is increasing. But if that rate of like improvement or rate of change is abrupt, sudden, and largely positive in its magnitude, okay, that can be called as an innovation, because that's a huge jump, like a several steps, like ahead. If you jump directly, to this one, so that's an innovative this thing. It carries like a huge potential compared to the like a present like base. Okay, if I take this as a like a level plus minus 0 as a base case, from here, if you jump directly like a many steps above, that can be an innovative like a solution which has like a disruptive like a capability. Like artificial intelligence, if you see, is an art like a kind of a carries this potential to like change the like the way we learn, the way we teach, the way we do like a stuff or search or like conduct any activities in a much advanced like a way, right? So and yeah, so that can be an innovative like a solution if it gets implemented for various applications. Okay, so that is also a point attached over here. In the face of a rapidly changing global economic landscape and increasing inequalities, sustained growth must include industrialization that, first of all, makes opportunities accessible to all people, and second, is supported by innovation and resilient infrastructure. Okay, So there are a lot of challenges, occurring at the same time. Okay. So, well, changing global economic landscape, like in the previous one, we were talking about like recessions and depressions in the market. Okay, which in turn impacts like a job opportunities. Thousands of people are like being laid off, and all of those situations. They become jobless. Right, it's hard to find job. Earning and all of that. So in those scenarios, how to deal? And another point, increasing inequalities. So if you see, this is an alarming situation. As a human, we must have respect for the other fellow humans, and not just humans, all other fellow species of this planet. Because if you see, this planet is home to not just humans but all of those other species as well, right? Where else they will go if we destroy like this planet of their habitat, right? So this whole like a world for us is a one living entity, okay, and this entity must be preserved at any cost. Okay, so the problem is key, it's talking about an increasing inequality. So this respect of like other species and other fellow human beings from different countries, different communities, different languages, different like maybe color, skin tone, or like a bodily dimensions, different like a cultures, there is this gap, it says like it's increasing. There is a disrespect happening to the other like a fellow like humans and communities, right? That should not happen actually. Okay, so how to drive this all industrial and like infrastructure development in the phase where you are seeing such inequalities are rising? Okay, that's a very grave situation, right? So it must work to foster that also, and bridge like that gap. Yeah, and this industrialization, that first of all makes opportunity accessible for all people. Okay, only when this becomes like inclusive, right? We have been discussing earlier also. If the growth is inclusive, which includes like everyone, every last person of the society and community and the country, okay, then you may call it as an inclusive, like a growth and development, right? So this thing must be inclusive. You cannot just keep on like taking things in forward direction without like sharing any benefit to like other people, other like a fellow humans, other like fellow Indians, right? Fellow like world citizens, right? So that is the thing. And second, supported by innovation and resilient infrastructure. Yeah. So we discussed. So what is the problem over here? Even before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, global manufacturing, considered an engine of overall economic growth, has been steadily declining due to tariffs and trade tensions. So even before like COVID, like this industrial growth, like in manufacturing sector, was slightly declining. We saw in the previous like module, the rate at which it was declining, right? Yeah, due to tariffs and trade tensions. So if you see like some countries, some friendlier countries are on good terms with other countries, then they promote like a trade and exchange. If they are not in good terms, that trade and exchange also gets like impacted. Okay, and it affects like everyone, all of those manufacturing units, even consumers, they are not able to get the like that product anymore, right? So in overall this thing, it creates a kind of like a negative environment, that you can call it as like a trade tension. Okay, so when these impacts, these like a political administrative things, when they start impacting like exchanges and commerce, okay, that's a trade tension, you can call it as. The manufacturing decline caused by the pandemic has further caused serious impacts on the global economy. Yes. In addition, the airport industry, also an important driver of economic development, faced the steepest decline in its history in the first 5 months of 2020, whether at the time of like a COVID pandemic. Okay, the huge sharp decline, with a 51% drop in airline passengers due to the global lockdown. Basic infrastructure like roads, information and communication technologies, sanitation, electrical power, and water remains scarce in many developing countries. In 2019, some 87% of people in developed countries used the internet. Developed countries. compared with just 19% in the least developed countries. Okay, we saw like this also previously, like how many people are like having connection of internet. So in the developed country this is like close to 87%, like only 13% people are left behind, whereas in the developing or least developed countries this is just at 19%. So this is the gap. These numbers are so close. These are the like the people who are the targets, and here the only people 19% who have like achieved like this level. Okay, so much of like a disparity between developed countries and developing ones, right? How much progress have we made? Investment in research and development globally, as well as financing for economic infrastructure in developing countries, has increased. And impressive progress has been made in mobile connectivity, with almost the entire world population, 97%, living within reach of a mobile cellular signal. So infrastructure wise, if you see, the facility is now extended to up to 97% people living within the reach of a mobile cellular signal. That means they, if needed, like they can go for it, and if easily accessible to them, they can avail this as a like a facility at their place. So 97% people are living in the reach of like a telecom signals, like a cellular signals, mobile phone connectivity. And that's a very good impressive like growth. Only 3% people are beyond the reach of cellular towers. I'm sure like like industries are expanding even to those regions. So why should I care? Inclusive and sustainable industrialization, together with innovation and infrastructure, can unleash dynamic and competitive economic forces that generate employment and income. They play a key role in introducing and promoting new technologies, facilitating international trade, and enabling the efficient use of resources. So, multiple benefits. The growth of new industries means improvement in the standards of living for many of us. If industries pursue sustainability, this approach will have a positive effect on the environment, of course. What is the price of inaction? If we don't do anything, the price is steep. Ending poverty would be more difficult if there are no more like a job opportunities. How are you going to give livelihood means to these people? Given the industry's role as a core driver of the global development agenda to eradicate poverty and advance sustainable development. Additionally, failing to improve infrastructure and promote technological innovation could translate into poor healthcare, inadequate sanitation, and limited access to education. What can be done about it? How can we help? Establish standards and promote regulations that ensure company projects and initiatives are sustainably managed. Okay, so this is the keyword over here, sustainably managed. Collaborate with NGOs and the public sector to help promote sustainable growth within the developing countries. Think about how industry impacts on your life and well-being, and use social media to push for policymakers to prioritize the SDGs. Some facts and figures. Before COVID-19, manufacturing growth was declining due to tariffs and trade tensions. We saw this number before. And then COVID-19 implications. The aviation industry has suffered the steepest decline. Air passenger number fell by 51% from January to May 2020 to compare to the same period previously. Financing for small scale industries is needed for their survival through the crisis. Because, this actually MSME, sector constitutes the largest, like a percentage of industries which are there in our country. And this employs the largest number of, employees also, right? So, volume wise, if you see, this is the huge one. Right, so and since there are more and more number of people dependent on such units, we should take care of these units. In turn, will be taking care of those all connected people. Only 35% have access to credit in developing countries. This is the year 2006 to 18. Investment in R&D is growing but needs to accelerate. R&D, very amazing, like a format, and a very amazing, like a thing in itself. Okay, and this has, all the potential to drive the economy, to drive the growth of human beings, and drive this whole planet into a sustainable, like a developing future, right? So R&D is very essential for growth and development of any country or any field. Okay, you may be aware, when Europeans started, like spreading across the world, capturing lands, they had, like this tool of R&D and latest technologies in their hands, through which they were able to, establish or rule over, on those, like new faraway places. Okay, so R&D, well, that was not so useful and advisable use, but if you're using it R&D, for noble purposes, definitely you're helping the whole humanity, right? So that kind of immense potential actually, it carries. So that's why R&D, must be promoted, and in every setting. And yeah, so you see, this is the figure 2010 to 17, 1.4 trillion to 2.2 trillion US dollars, right, in 2017. Fewer than 1 in 5 people use the internet in analysis. Yeah, 19%, 13%. Yeah, we saw that number. So now we will see, like aligning the SDGs with the value creation process. How do we do all of this? Okay, so in this chart, if you see, this outer, like this chain line is the continuous consideration of sustainable development issues over time. So as the time progresses, like this keeps on refining. Again, it comes back and it keeps on refining itself. Inside that, we have like components of value creation, preservation, diminution, over time. So from here to here, it is like increasing, right? So initially, if you're putting like efforts in financial, manufacturing, intellectual, human, social, and relationship, and natural, like cycles, so that becomes as an input which drives business activities, which drives output, and which drives final outcomes. And those outcomes actually go and serve, like again these like different sectors. These sectors are now categorized under one of the 17 SDGs, right? So for example, this first one, human, if you see, this has the potential to like help SDG 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 10, 12, 13, 14, 16 and 17. Similarly, if you see this one, like a social and relationship, this almost covers like all of the SDGs. So wonderful. The natural, these ones, intellectual, these ones, manufacturing, and financial. Financial also, if you see, it touches like most of them, right? And then again, if you see, there is an arrow, there is an output, like outcome, which is getting out and again, going back, as an input, in this whole process. And in between, if you see, this is square. This is the, like a circle of a business model, like how you can develop a business model, around like these 4 stages of inputs, business activities, outputs, and outcomes. Okay. So by including outlook, strategy and reduce allocation, by the help of governance, then risk and opportunities, performances, you can have your own, like a chain of, like a cyclic, this process of business model, and which comprises, to the sustainable development, right? Yeah. Some details you can see here at the bottom. So what are the targets and goals over here? Build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industry, foster innovation. Develop quality, reliable, sustainable and resilient infrastructure. Increase the access of small scale industries and other enterprises of financial services. Enhance scientific research and technology, particularly in developing countries, and by 2030 encourage innovation. By 2030, raise industries' share of employment and GDP. Update infrastructure and retrofit industries to make them sustainable. So technological applications, and with the like a change in the technology, one must actually move in sync, and definitely this sector also can help like propagating like those things to the needy, like how like these institutions can help facilitate sustainable and resilient infrastructure development in developing countries and small island developing states. Lastly, support domestic technology development, research and innovation in developing countries, increase access to information and communication technology to provide access to internet to everyone.